Hey, dreamers, and welcome to Dreamers Unite, the talk show for dreamers. I am your host, Sherry Pullum, and I thank you so very much for joining me again. I'm always honored and grateful when you come to this channel to learn, to be motivated, to be inspired, and to be educated. So if this is your first time on this channel, hey, here is the place where no dream is too big or too small to unpack. We interview guests from all walks of life so that they can share their journey, their ups, their downs, and most of all, I catch as many nuggets as I can and I throw them out and I share them with you to inspire you. Today, my guest is a man with a vision and a heart. And I am grateful and honored to bring you Reverend Gregory Jerome Jackson, Emeritus. Let me tell you a little bit more about this leader, pastor, activist, family man. I could still go on, but let me give you a little bit more about him. Reverend Jackson began his pastoral career at Monumental Baptist Church in Elmira, New York in 1975 and served there with distinction until 1984 when he was called to pastor Mount Olive Baptist Church in Hackensack, New Jersey, where he labored for nearly 35 years. Pastor Jackson presently serves as the newly elected president of the Lott, Carey Baptist Foreign Missions Convention. He also serves as part of the Baptist World Alliance and the Baptist Islamic Task Force. Pastor Jackson has served on many boards and has received recognition locally, nationally, and globally. He believes in transforming the world into the kingdom of God. Pastor Jackson is a proud husband, father, grandfather, and not only is he a friend to me and my family, but he is a friend to many around the world. Pastor Jackson, I'm so honored to have you here with us today.
I'm honored to be here.
Thank you. So tell us a little bit about your journey from growing up as a young boy in South Carolina to your pastoral career.
Well, I was born in 51 and I grew up in my early years until I was about 15 or 16 in South Carolina. My grandfather was a sharecropper. We raised cotton and vegetables and all that kind of stuff. My mom was a single mom and she worked in New Jersey as a domestic, and I grew up until my grandfather died on the farm in South Carolina, went to segregated schools of South Carolina. I loved my teachers. I loved school. And it was a way to get off the farm, number one. And the school was a new building with indoor plumbing and indoor heating and wonderful cafeteria. It was a wonderful experience. Beautiful young teachers that just graduated from South Carolina State in Orangeburg. And I literally fell in love with all of them.
Well, that will help to want to make you get your education by any means necessary. By any means necessary. Right. So what brought you up north and leading on to your college and your pastoral career?
As I mentioned, our world changed when my grandfather died. My grandfather died, I think he was about 57. He was a farmer, and that was my introduction to death. My grandfather died, and then I had some other uncles that were in Virginia that also died somewhere in that period. When he died, it was a transition off of the farm. He was a sharecropper, and we moved to a place called Black Bottom, which was a little part of a town in Landrum, South Carolina, where the other half of my family lived, which was my grandmother's father, who lived to be about 100 years old. Wow. And so we moved up there and lived in, kind of the shack, the house. I have the picture of the house we lived in on the wall in my office now with the church. And from there, you know, I always wanted to come to the promised land. My mom was in New Jersey, and I always wanted to come. Never had been to New Jersey. And then all the time she was working, trying to figure out, you know, my grandmother was getting older and older, and finally told me that I was moving to New Jersey.
Mm-hmm.
And so I had gone to grammar school up to the 8th grade in segregated schools of South Carolina, and moved just at the time when the schools were going to begin to be integrated in South Carolina. And a little nervous about whether or not I was ready for this so-called integrated school and whether I could compete or whatever. As it turned out, I was not very good in English and that kind of stuff, but I was great in math. I was
Mm-hmm.
probably better than most kids in math, and got involved in track and in the church, and those were kind of my way of finding myself in this new environment.
And going into the ninth grade too, I mean, hormones are raging. There's so much going on inside too. And
Yeah.
what was that like when you finally did settle in New Jersey? Did you have a positive high school experience here in New Jersey?
Yeah, I had a great high school experience, because again, I found my niche. I was better than most in math. I was very good in math, and I was a pretty good athlete. I only ran track for 1 year in the ninth grade because I had to go to work,
Uh-huh.
and because my mom was a single mom, and I went to work, and it turned out to be a good experience. I worked at a number of different places. You know, I think I started out making $1.25 an hour, something like that. They had the CETA program then, and they had a number of other programs that was designed for poor kids. And I worked for the Housing Authority. I worked for Exxon in the can filling department. So I had a number of jobs to keep me busy.
Yeah, it sounds like you were very busy. And so, how did you make your decision? Where were you going to go to college? And did you know already, like, college, I am college bound?
Yeah, I knew that I was going to college. I didn't know where I was going to college.
Mm-hmm.
And that was due primarily to my involvement in church, and uh, my involvement with the family that my mother worked for.
Mm-hmm.
My mom was a domestic. She cleaned houses. She worked for this Congressman Cornelius Gallagher, and we really became like family. And I always thought that she was more of a counselor to his wife than she was a person who cleaned the house. So you'd be sitting around the table for hours, just listening to his wife and talking and whatnot. And I would go over there from time to time. But somewhere along the line, he said that if I would, do good in school, and
Mm-hmm.
he would appoint me to West Point. And he did. When I graduated from high school, he appointed me to West Point. So I went for all the physicals and all that. The Vietnam War was going on then, and then somewhere I failed the physical. Had a heart murmur,
Yeah.
and so now, like, what are you going to do? And then there was EOF program. My pastor was close to Reverend Ursel Webb, who was pastor of Monumental Baptist Church in Jersey City. I applied for the EF program. I got in the EF program, and the rest is history. I went to St. Peter's College, applied to a number of other places, didn't have any money, stayed home, went to school, and it was a blessing for me.
Did you feel like your calling was to be a minister or pastor? Did you feel it was your
At that time, I was fighting the call, as you mentioned, hormones, everything else is going on in high school and in college. I really wanted to be an FBI agent back then, and I wanted to be a United States congressman because I was working for a United States congressman,
Uh-huh.
and that was my beginning in politics. So in my life, I've always been a part of the church, and then I've had political aspirations are always involved. I grew up at a time when Martin Luther King and the social justice kind of movement, the
Mhm.
civil rights movement, was a wonderful time to grow up. I maintain to this day that the two greatest periods in American history is the Civil War and the Civil Rights Movement. Right now, I'm taking a course on the Civil War. It was a great period that I think we're still fighting the Civil War today. Uh,
Agreed.
and uh, so I was wrestling with ministry, but my role models were ministers, were preachers and teachers.
Mhm.
Most likely, if I had not felt a calling for ministry, I would have been a teacher, and I probably would have been teaching history. And that's kind of my love. Even though I was good at math, as it turned out, I'm a better reader now than I am a mathematician. And I love history and trying to figure out how history can help us live in the present.
And from what I know about you, you definitely are a teacher.
Well, thanks. I'm trying to do both. Teacher,
And well,
preacher.
I think you are. I think you're doing
Okay,
both well. Yeah, I'm going to give you two thumbs up for it. And I know many
thanks.
others that
Uh,
you're welcome. And I know many others that will. We talked a little bit about, you getting involved in politics, which clearly you've continued on your journey of being a social activist. Social justice is very important to you. And why is that important to you? I mean, especially for these young people to know the history and the journey, because I think young people now are becoming more connected because of all that's going on, where marching in the streets again is more prevalent, but they still don't know their history really. And so, why is social justice and activism still important to you?
well, I think you begin where you are in life. I grew up as a poor kid uh, and a poor family. I mean, it was a wonderful family, but you see people with things that you don't have, can go to schools that you cannot go to, that have experiences that uh, you're not privileged to just because the color of your skin. And
Mhm.
then the time that you grow up in helps to shape and form who you are.
Yeah.
I'm sure I would have been a different person had I been born 10 years or 15 years later. But when I was born, and what was going on in the country, what was going on in the world, helped to develop and shape me. And my experience and my grandparents' experience of being involved in the church, listening to great preachers over the years and gospel music, and those kind of experiences shape you.
Yeah.
And you know, I, uh, there were probably two great people, black people, along at the time when I was coming. One was Malcolm X, and the other was Martin Luther King. And I was a little afraid of Malcolm X, and probably my mother would have killed me if I got to a Malcolm X kind of rally. And then our involvement in the church and our pastor involvement in social justice and the NAACP and that kind of stuff helped to shape who I am and how I thought. And then her working for the United States congressman and him being a very progressive kind of guy had an impact on my thinking, what I was reading, and my experiences. And then going to college and the exposure to Black history,
Mhm.
and those kinds of things. We are shaped by those kind of experiences.
Did you go to the March on Washington?
No, I did not go to the March on Washington. I was probably like 16 or 17, but my mother wasn't having it. Chances are, if I'd really been pushing it, I probably could have gone, but no, I didn't. But I did go to the Million Man March years later, and I did take my son to the Million Man March, and I think we just
Awesome.
celebrated, what was it, a 40 year, 50 year, whatever it was. No, it wasn't. I don't know. Whatever anniversary it was recently, he just texted me and talked about how glad he was that he was able to go. And I have been to other marches as well since that time, gone down to Selma and other places at various marches that's been held. But no, I didn't go to the one in.
Yeah. And I know you're very active in Hackensack. You've been to many vigils and marches here in Hackensack, and you sit on many boards, and you are definitely involved in the community in every way that I think that you can be. You're also the president of Lott Carey Foreign Missions Convention.
Mm-hmm.
And how did you get involved in global missions?
I got involved in global missions after coming to Mount Olive in 1984. I really was not a mission person at all as a youngster in seminary. I was a social justice person, did not understand the relationship between social justice here and social justice there. Did not understand the connection between our being persons and people of the diaspora, and that Black people pretty much have the same kind of experience wherever we are in the world. And it was through becoming pastor at Mount Olive, Mrs. Coleman and the Foreign Mission Society. They were very, very, it was only like 5 or 6 of them. And they, they pushed every year for us to give that $500 to Lott Carey. And then Mrs. Somerville, who was the wife of the person who was the secretary treasurer at the time, would come, and she probably was 85 years old then. I don't know, she was old, but she was a feisty old lady. She would not stay in a hotel. She always stayed with somebody in their house. And probably like the second year, maybe the first year, I don't know. Maybe it was the first year that I was there. She came and she gave a message related to global missions. And she said, "Y'all let that boy come next year to Lott Carey and I will pay." And she did. They gave me the money to fly to Louisville, Kentucky. It was my first experience. A young pastor, 33 years old, not having a clue, about global missions at all. And she paid. And after that, I never missed a convention except for 1 year when I had surgery. And just 1997, I think it was, something like that, I got to go on my first mission trip. And it was with Clifford Jones and Jerry Sanders and one other pastor. I can't think of the name of the pastor right now, John Lewis. They were all seasoned pastors. All their churches were much further along in terms of mission and in ministry, period. It was a wonderful experience. So relationships are important to your development. Who you hang with and what you learn and your exposure, as you know, that we want our kids to have, you can learn as much from people as you can from books, and maybe more.
Yeah. And from life experience, from traveling there. And so how did that experience of really opening up this world of global missions and travel, how did that change you?
Well, my experience to travel happened really my junior year in college.
Okay.
Because I got an opportunity to study at the American University in Cairo, Egypt. Poor kid in the projects, just happened to be in the EOF office at the right time, at the right place. And the director said, "Well, how would you like to study at an African university?" I said, "Oh, I'd love it." I've really never given it any thought. So he says, "Take this information, go over to Fordham University, talk to this guy." So I went to Fordham and talked to the guy. And so he asked, "Well, where do you want to go to, college?" I was wrestling with ministry, although I hadn't made a decision. So never hearing, really not thinking about what school, never known any schools anywhere in the world. So I happened to see this catalog on the table that said AUC, the American University of Cairo, Egypt. So he asked me, "Well, where would you like to go to school?" I said, "Well, I've been thinking about going to Egypt."
That is great.
And that's how I got there. And so then fill out all the paperwork, got my mother's permission, which surprised me that she would say yes. And I'm sure it was Mrs. Gallagher and Mr. Gallagher and the people that she worked with or for that encouraged her to let me go. I, on the other hand, as it looked more and more like I was going to be accepted, I started getting sloppy and lazy and scared because it looked like they were going to say yes. And I had never been on an airplane. I had never been away from home, never. And my first airplane ride was to Cairo, Egypt. My first time away from home was, in Egypt, my first airplane ride. And on that airplane ride, that time I had both a helicopter ride as well as an airplane ride. So, I wasn't filling stuff out. I wasn't sending stuff back on time. So, they said, listen, do you want to go or don't you want to go? And so I had to talk with Mr. Gallagher, the congressman. And he says, listen, this is a wonderful opportunity. You better grow up here because you're going to lose this opportunity. And if you drop out of college, you're going to have another trip that you don't want to make. Probably you'll be going to Vietnam. So if I was you, I would fill out the paperwork and stay in school. Nobody explained it like that to me.
Nobody bottom lined it like that.
Right.
Yeah.
So after that, I filled out the paperwork and spent the junior year abroad in Cairo, Egypt at the American University. And so I traveled around the Middle East to Jordan and to Syria and to Lebanon. And from there, after the year was over, I went to the Sudan, I went to Kenya, I went to Ethiopia. And I turned 21 years old in Egypt. I was a student. So that was my first experience to travel. And as I got older, and my daughter wanted to go to Spain on her junior year abroad, and I'm like, oh my God, my mother really let me go. I'm surprised.
Yeah. Well, your mom seemed like she was very protective of you. Like she was like sheltered you a bit. Yeah. Well,
But, she surprised me, and I sold my car, and that's how I was able to. I had a car, a 66 Dodge Charger, canary yellow, my first car that I loved that car. I sold it, and I was able to travel around in the summer after that first year, after the junior year in Cairo.
so let's talk about Mount Olive Baptist Church, where you served for where you served for about 35 years. Yes. What would you say is your first, let's look at the lesson that you learned from being pastor for 35 years at Mount Olive Baptist Church. One of the greatest lessons.
I guess what I learned is that the church takes on some of your characteristics, and you take on some of the church characteristics. It's a dance. Sometimes you lead the dance, and sometimes the church, leads the dance. And just like global missions, for instance, I wasn't in the global missions at all. And you grow, you become, you learn. And Mount Olive, it's not a huge church, but it's a great church because it allowed me to do all that I wanted to do. It stretched me beyond my wildest imagination. I was able to go through doors that I've never dreamt that I would be able to travel the world and become president of Lott, Carey, and some of the persons that I've met in politics, presidents and vice presidents and governors and all of that kind of stuff, and to be able to speak for this congregation that I knew had my back, and so it's been a wonderful journey for me, and I'm just grateful for the privilege.
Yeah, and as a proud member of MOBC, I just want to say thank you.
Thank you.
It's been a privilege having you lead the flock as a compassionate, kind, caring, really just giving of yourself is tremendous. Because it's one thing, really, I think, to be a leader and do the job, but it's another thing to go the extra mile that you have done. Yeah.
Well, I think it's important to come to the realization the difference between a leader and an administrator. And I think early on, I was a decent administrator. I became a leader. I grew into leadership through reading, through exposure, through networking with members and pastors and young people and old people, and through the circumstances of and I don't want to say discrimination in Hackensack and beyond. So that's kind of the life journey.
And another sign of a brilliant person that knows that they need to learn and that they don't know everything. That's just
I certainly know that.
A sign of brilliance. That is just a sign of brilliance.
If that makes you brilliant, I'm brilliant.
You are. Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. What are some of the most challenging moments that have presented itself as, pastor of a church for so long?
I think probably is the early years. Financially, we were really struggling. I had 2 kids and a wife, and Barbara was not working. I was making $300 a week at the church, and I thought we were going to go under. I just wasn't sure. I wasn't sure we were going to make it, and we did. Thank God. Through preaching opportunities, and back then they gave you on your vacation they gave you something, Thanksgiving they gave you something, Christmas they gave you something, that wasn't salary, but they took up an offering for you. So the Lord made a way. So, and then it was early on. It was I was young. And, the leadership of the church was much older. I mean, they were seniors close to it. So, we bumped heads on a few occasions. And I wasn't sure that I wanted to be there for another year, never mind another 5 years or another 10 years. And I'm not sure that they wanted me to be there. But over time, they won some dances. I won some dances. It's the dance, and we grew. If we didn't love each other, we certainly grew to respect each other, and eventually we grew to love each other, and so that they knew I wasn't going to run away with the store. They knew, they began to know that at least I had some sense of integrity, and so that's pretty much. And I focused early on 2 areas that I thought was key. One was senior citizens, and the other was young people. Those were the areas that I really focused on, try to develop some ministry in those areas.
And I think in any relationship, it's a, like you said, it is a dance, and it's a give and it's a take, and it's Absolutely. A compromise. Yeah. Absolutely. And we have to learn how to do that if we want to be successful.
You don't come to the church as the pastor. You become the pastor. You come to the church in a position after you love people a while, after they trust you, after they begin to respect your leadership. You become, and probably a defining moment for me of becoming pastor was the garbage workers in Hackensack. The city of Hackensack decided that they were going to lay off all the garbage workers and hire a firm. They would no longer be city employees. Well, most of the garbage workers in the city of Hackensack were African Americans. And that was the only department where there was a significant number of African Americans. So if they laid off the garbage worker, there would literally be no African Americans working for the city of Hackensack, and we're paying all these taxes. Well, I could not deal with that. So sort of got people together. We went to the city council meeting, and we packed the city council. I mean, it was packed. And I remember in young Carey McCall was a member there. Carey McCall. Not the father, the son, and he was there. And then there were so many people there, so the fire marshal said, some people are going to have to leave. There's just too many people here. Carey McCall came up behind me and he whispered in my ear, "Pastor, do you want us to leave or not?" That moment, I felt like I became pastor because I was leading a group of men who respected me, who said, if you say for us to leave, we'll leave. But if you say for us not to leave, we ain't going nowhere. That was a defining moment for my leadership in the community. Not so much as a preacher, as pastor, as a community leader, as a person respected in the community with a voice. Because you don't have power or authority without somebody behind you.
Mm-hmm.
I also learned that after I retired, because I went to a meeting after I retired, and before I retired, if they had some kind of political meeting or whatever, I would have always been invited to the stage. Like Reverend Jackson, I could be sitting in the audience and they'd call me up, come on up, sit here.
Yeah.
Well, this is about a month later, maybe 2 months after I retired, had the big banquet. I'm sitting out in the audience. No one invited me to there were all these preachers there. No one said, so because I had no voice, really, I didn't represent anybody. So you have to, it's a way of keeping you humble and recognizing that it's not about you, it's about who you represent. And if you don't represent anybody, it's I know you represent yourself and your family, but hey, in terms of that leadership role, you have to always be mindful of where your strength comes from.
On this show, Pastor, I catch as many nuggets as I can. And that's a huge nugget right there for our viewers. And this is a show, after all, about people trying to reach their dreams and their goals and their vision. And I believe dreams are sacred. It starts with a vision and an idea, something in your heart that, I believe that God inspires us to do. And then, of course, it's the hard work and the task of digging and learning and growing and experiencing to allow those dreams to manifest. What offering can you give someone who may let fear block them? Because you had that fearful moment too, and thank goodness someone came in and said, hey, listen, this is a great opportunity. But not everybody has a great family. Not everyone has even great friends. And you made another great point. Surround yourself with good people. But what offering can you give someone that might be letting fear stop them from reaching their dream?
I love Westerns. And growing up as a boy, I still like cowboys. And there was a wonderful John Wayne line. And John Wayne says, this is theology according to John Wayne. John Wayne says, you can be scared to death, saddle up anyway. And I have learned that it's in the saddling up anyway. And you may not reach your goal. For instance, I mentioned that I wanted to be a congressman back in the day. I have had some opportunities to get involved in politics, not so much at the Congress level, but at the local level in terms of probably running for something. I've never run for an office in my life. People have asked me, but in politics, it's like in so many other things. If you miss the timing, in trouble, like it's the time, it's the location, and I missed the time. And I didn't think that I could win the congressional thing. I think I could have probably won some state kind of stuff, maybe even some county kind of stuff, but I missed the time. But the journey has been great, even though I never reached the congressional. Congressmen come to me. People running for Congress come to me. People running for assembly or the freeholders or the Senate and president come to me.
That's right.
And so it's not so much meeting that long-term goal. Along the way, you might not meet that one, but the Lord is of the blessings in store for you that you didn't even dream about.
That's right.
And so that would be what I would say to people. Even if you don't meet your goal, saddle up. You don't know how God's gonna bless you along the journey. What you're gonna learn, how you're gonna be strengthened. When people take pot shots at you, as they will, but there's something in the journey.
Yeah, there's something in the journey. Okay, this is a moment where I'm going to catch that nugget from you, Pastor Jackson. Listen, dreamers, if you feel that you can't, saddle up anyway. There might be something else new for you on the horizon. You don't know unless you try. So I
Absolutely.
love, and I'm going to take this nugget I'm going to keep here, but I'm also going to take it, boom, and throw it to you, dreamers, because saddle up anyway. Saddle
Yeah.
up. Yeah. And then just find out what happens. My grandfather used to say, get on out there. Something might just fall on you.
I like it.
Yeah, he did. So thank you for that blessing. Thank you for that nugget. And, we all could use, and I know even for myself, listen, we all have some low, hard days sometimes. And
Yeah.
we
Yeah.
are in some dark days and some trying times. And so we all need some inspiration and some motivation and faith and prayer to get us to on the other side.
We're
Yeah.
gonna get there.
What would you like your legacy to be?
I think I'd like for my legacy to be that I tried, and that I was I loved my people, but I loved other people as well. That I sought for the middle ground. That uh, that while we are not better than anybody else, we are as good as anybody else. And that I encourage my church and my congregation to strive for what God had put within them. Don't ever think that you're better than anybody else, but never ever think that you're less than anybody else.
Yeah.
And for my kids as well as the entire congregation, that's what I'd like for my legacy to be. And I've always wanted to feel that I left the church better than I received it. And sometimes I've seen people stay too long, and it's a lesson for all of us. You can stay too long. You lose your energy, you lose your vision, and it's important to know when to hold them and when to fold them. And I'm not sure that I got it right. I think I did.
I'll say yes.
Okay, in terms of, because there are great young men and young women out there that is looking for an opportunity that I believe that Mount Olive is a wonderful place for the right person, the right man, the right woman, and if God blesses them like He blesses me, like He blessed me, it will be a wonderful journey. It's not a big mega church, but it's big enough to support you and to give you space to grow and to become. It's a wonderful ministry here. There's always some challenges in our community, like housing and the educational system and and all those kind of things that we face right here, right next to New York City, which is a wonderful place to be.
Yeah, and it's also, if I can put another little plug in for MOBC, it's also a hardworking and a loving church that supports the church family and the community and global missions, Pastor, thanks to you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, and continuing on that journey.
One thing that I would say, that in terms of a regret, that I don't think I did enough of, and that is expose. We talked about missions. We had missions there, but it really didn't take enough people on mission trips. That I really got involved in global mission, not just by going to Lott, Carey, but by actually going to South Africa, by actually going to Zimbabwe and these other places around the world. And so that's a regret that I did not, do that nearly enough. Even our ministers, Reverend Hayes, we went to Australia together. It really impacted her life. And I'm just sorry that I didn't do more of that.
Well, it's not too late, Pastor Jackson.
All right, saddle up so we can go on a mission trip.
Saddle up, that's right. Saddle up, take your own advice. Saddle up. It is never too late. Speaking of never too late, what is on the horizon for you? Because officially you are retired. I'll put it in air quotes.
Well, what's on the horizon is I have one more year as president of Lott, Carey. Most likely we'll probably be moving maybe down to the Baltimore area next to the kids and hang out close to our kids and the grandchildren at some point next year or the year after probably. I want to do some things. I've always stayed close to the global missions. Might be taking some people like yourself and others on mission trips at various places around the world. We had a trip scheduled for Cuba this year, but that's probably not going to happen even next year given this pandemic. We'll see. I am taking a course right now on the Civil War at Columbia online. Civil, as I mentioned, the two great periods since American history as far as I'm concerned, and one is the Civil War era and the Civil Rights Movement. So I'm taking this course. And continue to I would really like to do some traveling on purpose. By that I mean I'd like to travel to those places on the slave route, from Portugal to Senegal to Haiti. As I learned this Civil War, I'd like to take a steamboat down the Mississippi River and those kind of things to sort of connect the dots related to the Civil War. My early life, I know about South Carolina and that kind of racism that we experienced down there. But even sometimes you can learn more in hindsight about your experience. It makes sense, to know how far, Spartanburg is from Charleston, and to understand slavery a little bit better. So that's what I'm trying to do right now. Who knows? I might end up trying to find me a little job teaching the Civil War, some community college.
That's what I was going to say to you, really and truly. You might go back to one of your callings, and one of your dreams was to teach history.
Who knows?
Yeah, who knows? Well, the possibilities are endless. They are endless. Yeah. So I have one more. It's not really a question, but I'd love for you to complete a sentence.
Okay.
I believe that I came to this planet to
love my people, encourage my people, be a servant of my people, and help my people to love themselves and to grow through all of the adversity, to dream big, to be a leader. And I believe I came to this earth to help people to get along. And I believe I came to this earth to preach the gospel in a relevant way, that where the gospel and our lives come together in a way that helps to set us free, not just internally, but internally and externally.
So much richness in this conversation, and I believe that you're already living so much and have lived so much of your purpose, and there's so much more to come. Yeah, I see you saddling up, Pastor Jackson.
Okay, well, good.
Yeah, and continuing on. And you're like literally one of my favorite people on the planet. You really are.
Thank
And
you.
I appreciate your family. You know, your family, you probably don't know this, but when I was doing that documentary,
Mm-hmm.
I was like, where's the royal family? It was
In
my
England.
yes, no, they were here at
I
MODC.
hear, I
That's
hear.
where they are.
We appreciate it. We appreciate
Yeah,
that.
and I appreciate you, and thank you so much, really, again, for joining me, and thank you for your time. And dreamers, I thank you so much for joining me. And if you have not subscribed, I don't know what the heck you're waiting for. After this rich, deep, motivational, inspiring, elevating, educational conversation, hit the subscribe button and hit the blue bell for more notifications when our content comes out. And I will see you again next time on Dreamers Unite.